Hi, everybody.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome to our Friday vlog. So, Angus, any absent-mindedness to report this week?
No, I think there's nothing on that front. Although there was one thing when, well, I guess there was something from a couple of weeks ago which I felt like I should have shared.
What's that?
Which is when we were coming back from our recent vacation, and I was at the airport, and my luggage had just gone through the X-ray machine, and then the TSA woman turned to me and said, "Are you a preacher?"
What?
And I said, "No, I'm not a preacher." And she said, "No, are you pre-check?" which I thought was really funny.
That is funny.
I was convinced she said, "Are you a preacher?" Yeah, but other than that, I've been pretty sharp on the ball this week, I feel.
Maybe you're taking some new vitamins that I don't know about.
Maybe.
But that preacher incident, it just goes to show how we experience our own reality that's coming out of our own mind and not what's really going on in the world.
Exactly. I was very much experiencing my own reality in that situation.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about this week?
Oh, I don't know. I read somewhere this morning about how Aldous Huxley talked about in one of his books, I guess it's probably The Brave New World, about there being, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm not as articulate as Aldous Huxley, but the essence of it is there's like a in his mind, there's like a sort of super conscious state. Let's say the field of infinite creative possibility. Mm-hmm. Whatever label we're going to slap on that, we can say God, whatever. Mm-hmm. I'll go more secular and say the infinite field of creative possibility. And I imagine he would say something along those lines too. But he was talking about how, as human beings, we have, and I think he uses the term mind too, like a super mind kind of thing. That we kind of float in this consciousness, and it's available to us at any instant, but we have this reducing valve that allows us. And in his mind, and he does it in a way where he's talking about, as human beings, it's about survival. It's about all the sort of, fulfilling all our primal needs, and that we just couldn't handle that super conscious state without having some sort of reducing valve. So it made me think, because for me, it was this great idea that ultimately, there is this field of infinite creative possibility. And I had this thought this week, in a sense, without understanding how the mind works, we kind of microdose on truth. We go through life microdosing on truth, and we do it innocently. We kind of, because we're not focusing in that direction, we're just getting on with our lives. But we get snippets of truth, but instead of having this reducing valve, and I kind of like that metaphor, I always see it as we have this sort of filtration system, and that filtration system is directly linked to our state of mind. State of mind vis-a-vis, are we in a low mood, or are we in a good mood, or are our spirits high? And that filtration system is kind of affected by that state of mind. So you could also use the analogy of a lens. So it's kind of like, I think of my glasses that are photosensitive. Is that the right term to use? Is that the technology? So in the same way that if I go outside into bright sunlight, they'll darken. I come inside, they come more clearer. But it's kind of like, I guess in a sense, it's kind of like in reverse. If you could imagine, there's a similar technology that I have at my disposal inside my head, that when I get into a low mood, those optics kind of darken and I can't see the truth as well. But when I'm in good spirits, the optics become clearer, and I become more settled. And instead of microdosing on the truth, I'm getting a bigger taste of it, as it were. So I don't know, that's got my mind thinking. I went off on a bit of a tangent this morning, but I like the idea that there are all these reference points, and pretty much, a lot of people are talking about it in their own inimitable way. And here's Aldous Huxley.
Way back when.
In A Brave New World, talking about pretty much the same thing, but maybe in a more misguided way, because I feel like that putting the onus on this being about survival and fulfilling primal needs, and finding a way to reduce it so we can somehow deal with the life that the body that we're in. I think that's more of a limited way of defining it.
Yeah, I haven't read Aldous Huxley, so I can't speak to that. But I love your metaphor of microdosing on truth, and that we actually are all having that experience, whether we realize it or not, that the truth is there, it's coming through us. And it makes me kind of think about those morphine drips. You can kind of turn up the dose. But what I hear in what you're saying is that when we understand that there's another direction to look in, that's not the direction of survival, that's not the direction of pleasure and pain and surviving all of that and figuring all that there's another direction to look in, which is toward truth, toward what is unchangeable. And I know that can sound really esoteric and heady, and how is that practical on a day-to-day level? But from my personal experience, I spent so many years focusing on fixing the survival, having more pleasure, trying to have less pain, and it didn't really get very far. But just looking in that other direction that you're pointing to and seeing that infinite field of possibility to the best of my abilities, or not even necessarily even seeing it, but at least looking in that direction and seeing what does occur to me in my own personal truth from that place, has been far more helpful on so many levels. And really it impacts every area of life, and including the area of relationships.
Yeah, and I'm going to flog this optical analogy to death, because I feel like, there's so much of a preoccupation of all the things that I can do to get to that place of well-being inside. And I feel that in the same way that the muscles in our eyes kind of adjust to the light, in the same way you could say that by looking in that direction, our optics adjust to that state of being, and in a sense we kind of build a muscle for it. And it's not like we have to work at it or do anything. I feel like all we need to do is just be conscious of it and look more in that direction. So it's like, it's not hard work at all. And if it ever was hard work, it would be like going in the other direction. Mm-hmm. It's just simply a case of like, yeah, when we see something new, when we have an insight, the technology adjusts, and we develop a new muscle.
I love that. I'm laughing about the TSA pre-check, because maybe you are a preacher.
Maybe.
Maybe in your mind you were becoming a preacher and you didn't even know it.
Let there be light.
Well, we hope everyone has a great weekend, and we're inviting you to look in the direction of truth rather than just innocently microdosing on it. Why not make a choice?
That's right.
Take care, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.